Hi and welcome back to Bike Speed. So this week we're doing this Ribble TT bike. Customers asked us to change the Aero sticks for a different angle one and also to sort the brakes out. He was aware that the brakes were sticking. You can see it here, it's binding on the rim, it stops it, and it was front and rear brake that was binding, just skimming the rim one side, so we had to adjust that as well. You can actually see it here when we flick from one side to the other. You've got no gap on the left, and on the right here you've got 2 or 3 millimeters. It's just not quite set up correctly. Same on the front, you can see we've got a gap one side, not quite the other. Again, just not quite set up perfectly, so we're going to deal with that. Also, the customer had noticed that he'd got rubber blocks in there for an alloy rim and not carbon blocks, so we changed them out as well on request of the customer. So first thing I do is I just check how the gears are flowing and how they're changing, because that will determine whether I'm going to replace both the inner and outer cables to change the sticks. But in this case we didn't need to change the outer. You can see here it was flowing smoothly. By doing this as well, I can check whether it's a one piece inner or whether it's in several sections and would need feeding through in a different way. But this bike actually was quite comfortable to do. It wasn't a problem to do. So we got them cables out and get these shifters off here. And you'll see in a second I just used WD-40 there. It's a great trick for getting off handlebar grips of any nature on any bike. It just squirts in there, turns them straight away, and off they come. Then you just wash that off. So we had to just move these headrests to get to these mounting bolts, and on the one that I'm now undoing we noticed both those inner ones were quite corroded, so we swapped those out. You can see how that head's corroded because that's the one you see when you're in your Aero spot. That's what you're looking down at, and that would drive me up the wall. So you can see there the left one's tidy and the right one's not, so we just swapped them out as well. And it's just a detail that when you're sitting there in your Aero position, you're not going to suddenly notice them corroded bolts and just drive you up the wall, spoil the race. So we swapped the sticks over now. So this is like a metal hole bung that goes in the end of the Aero sticks. But I always put a rubber grommet in there because I've seen those cut through the outers of your cabling. So I just always, whenever I'm changing these sort of bolt bars or the cables within them, I change them over. Now this, I've actually just put hair lacquer on this. It's a great lubricant for getting handlebar grips back on a bike, but also once it dries, it grips them solid on the handlebar, so you get no twist. So it's a great little trick that to use hair lacquer. Next up, we're just putting the shifters back on, and just see here before we put the new cables in. This is the old cable, 1.12 millimeters. This is the new cable, one of our super slick, which is 1.07, just slightly narrower. And the reason it is because they're wound tighter, so they're a really smooth cable. They shift lovely. We use it on all our road bikes and TT bikes and anything of any class. We use those beautiful cables on. We don't offer options, we just use them. So the rear one's in there. Next up the front. Fortunately for us, the front one slid straight in. They can be menacing at times getting that front one up through the little hole in the frame, but this one came up nicely, so we're just refitting it. Now we're just indexing the gears after refitting. I haven't cut the cables at this stage. I always index the gears first before I cut the cables, and everything there was smooth. So we now put this rubber bunk. This you'll see in the before and afters was actually out of the frame when it arrived, so we pushed that back in. I have a feeling that could be an ongoing issue, and it's just one of the little design things about this frame that I don't know whether we can address at some point, but at the moment it's all back to normal. So we've got this lovely TRP brake here. This is a lovely brake, reminds me of the old Campagnola Delta brakes. We got the front wheel out, brake box out, and then we just use one of our little chain catchers here. We sell these in store if you want one. That just stops the chain dangling on the bike as you're working on it. It's a great little tool. And then so now all the brake fittings are out, and we're just going to clean up everything here because that's what we do here at Bike Speeds. And just this is the only time you can get to really clean in the mounts and everything is when the pads and the holders themselves are off the bike. So these are Clark's Blue carbon brake blocks. They're a lovely block. I've actually used these myself on a TT bike, and I like them because they're quite firm, so they've got good braking power, but they don't damage the rim surface, the lacquer surface on carbon. Yeah, I recommend them brake blocks. He picked well there. The customer brought those in, but he's picked a good one there. So next up, we're just polishing the inners of the forks and the rear triangle on the inside with resin polish. It's the only time that's really easy to polish a bike is when all the wheels and everything are off, so we cleaned all that up because although the bike was spotless, that's areas that you can't always clean. And next up we've put the blocks back on, and then we can just adjust. Unfortunately, we were quite relieved with this chainring there. We could just get in to do the adjustments we needed there without having to take the chainring off. At times I get to this and you can't. So here you just notice that the cable was not in its correct groove, and that was actually what was affecting this braking. Because it was twisting, it was pulling at a wrong angle out of that first one, and that was twisting the whole brake over. So we did that into the correct spot, nipped off the excess cable, and that was perfect. Same with the front one now. We just adjust up the brake blocks and adjust this lovely TRP brake. It's a lovely brake that for adjustment. And then finally we go over everything, torque everything up that we've touched in any way, just to make sure everything's correct. And yep, that's that little job done. A few hours work, always rewarding when you do a little job like this. As you can see from these before and afters, we made a little bit of a difference to this bike too. So thanks for watching, and please subscribe.